I've spent my entire political life fighting for those people who do not have the wealth and the power, trying to do what's right. And that's really what it's about.
This is our nation, and we're not going to let a handful of corporations take it away from us.
Stop the war effort. Stop the military machine. We want decent education for our kids.
We can create a society where all people can have the health care that they need. Protecting our environment gives us the opportunity to create millions of new, decent-paying, productive jobs. We want the millionaires and the multinational corporations who have not been paying their fair share of taxes to start paying.
If we stand together, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. Let us go forward together. Thank you.
Always fighting for us. That's the takeaway message from Bernie Sanders' brand new campaign ad for the 2020 election. And it really sums up why so many people are lining up behind Bernie Sanders in this moment, why he has such momentum, such growing strength and optimism and passion around his campaign. And it's because of that remarkable political consistency. In the oldest clip there, likely from around the time I was born, maybe shortly after, Bernie Sanders says that his political career has always been dedicated to fighting for social justice for regular people. And he never stopped doing that. He never stopped doing that when he ran for mayor. He never stopped doing that when he ran for Congress. He never stopped doing that when he went into the Senate. He never stopped doing that during his first presidential run, and he's not stopping now during his second presidential run, which is showing that he has the potential to not only win the Democratic nomination, but to defeat Donald Trump and become the next president of the United States of America. And it's all rooted in that steadfast political consistency. That word always is so important when you're talking about Bernie Sanders. It's not most of the time. It's not usually. It's not when politically expedient or when I can make a few bucks on the side personally. It's always fighting for working people, always fighting for those striving for economic, social, and political justice, and fighting against social, political, and economic injustice. Whether it's on wars, whether it's on ensuring that workers have stronger unions, whether it's on taxing the rich and wealthy and well-connected to ensure that their economic power does not snowball, and to ensure that when it comes to paying for the things regular people need, everything from education to healthcare to infrastructure, that money comes from those who have benefited from the status quo and who can most afford to shoulder the burden financially. Bernie Sanders has never wavered from any of that. And Bernie Sanders has never even wavered from some of the most important questions around climate. As I've noted yesterday on the channel, Bernie Sanders has the support of dozens and dozens and dozens of climate scientists and countless climate activists who understand that not only is Bernie Sanders' Green New Deal the only way forward to save the planet in a socially responsible way, but that Bernie Sanders has for a long time been warning citizens, his fellow politicians, and anyone who will listen that unless we do something, we will face inevitable climate catastrophe. Bernie Sanders has known that for a long time, for the vast majority of my life. He wasn't listened to. It's only now that people are really starting to listen. And it shows yet again that Bernie Sanders has made these speeches regardless of whether or not he could benefit from them. Bernie Sanders said some of these words at a time where they were probably disadvantageous politically. In the late 80s, early 90s, the peak of neoliberalism, when supposedly history had ended and capitalism as understood then would reign supreme forever, taking positions in favor of workers, taking positions in favor of taxing corporations, taking positions in favor of equality and social programs, was dangerous in an era where neoliberalism absolutely dominated almost everybody, even those who considered themselves pretty strong progressives. Bernie Sanders was a voice crying out into the wilderness and very few people heard him. And it shows that Bernie Sanders has always been right, even when it was politically wrong to be right. Because morally, based on his philosophy, based on his ideals, he knew where he stood. And he knew who he stood with. Working people, marginalized people, the climate, the young people born and the young people yet to be born. That's who he stood with. And he still stands with those people today. But now we can see the crowds are bigger. The energy is there. The attention is there. The hope is there from millions of people. And it really reminds me of something Bernie Sanders said a little bit ago, which is that, I made a lot of lonely speeches, cast a lot of lonely votes, ran a lot of lonely campaigns, but I'm not lonely anymore. And whenever I even say that to myself, I sort of tear up a little bit, guys, because, Bernie Sanders took these stands not alone. Bernie Sanders obviously had supporters. He had people in Burlington and in Vermont who believed in him. There were progressives and socialists all over the United States, and even some of us here in Canada who 10, 15 years ago knew that Bernie Sanders was offering a vision almost no one else in American politics was offering. And we appreciated that. But he was very, very lonely. He didn't really have many people supporting him. And now he's not so lonely anymore. And I think that it's time to understand that when we see ads like this, it's a perfect encapsulation of who Bernie Sanders was, is, and will remain when he gets, the highest office in the land, which is the presidency of the United States. Bernie Sanders deserves our continued support and solidarity because at the very least, we owe him that for his generations of support and solidarity and loyalty to working class people, to marginalized people, and to progressive causes. So if you want to show somebody in 1 minute why Bernie Sanders is the man to fix not only the day-to-day issues, but the historical problems that face modern capitalist society in the United States and even around the world, show them this. Show them that whenever we're talking about problems today, Bernie Sanders has recognized those problems as they were developing, as they were beginning to face working class people, and he warned us, and we didn't listen, and people suffered because of it. We have an opportunity to make sure that the young politicians today aren't crying into the wilderness in vain. That 20 years from now, we won't need to show clips like this about where we went wrong, not listening to the cutting-edge politicians. Because you can elect one right now. You can elect the person that will make those changes, instead of just pining for them and what might have been 20 years from now as we watch old video clips. Bernie Sanders is not just the present, he's the future. He's the harbinger of a better world. This campaign ad proves it in spades. And I think we need to share this campaign ad, this video, around to as many people as can see it, because it will demonstrate once and for all that at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders has always been with working people.